Hey, good afternoon to you. It's 507 News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. You can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Your call's coming up this hour. President Trump signed an executive order within the last hour or so banning men from playing women's sports. It's unbelievable that it even takes a presidential executive order to enforce such common sense rules. This is the way ESPN is describing it today. President Donald Trump will sign an executive order Wednesday designed to prevent people who were biologically assigned male at birth from participating in women's or girls' sporting events. What do you mean, were biologically assigned male at birth? That's another way of saying, are men. Ridiculous. Joining me now, someone who is very pleased by what took place today. She was there with the President of the United States. Lauren Miller is a member of the Independent Women's Forum, an ambassador for them, and a professional golfer. Lauren, good to have you with us.
Thank you so much for having me on this historic day.
What was it like? What was it like being at the White House and seeing the President sign this executive order?
Truly a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Nothing that I ever thought that I would see in my lifetime. I definitely imagined that I would just be hitting a little white ball around a field and not having to stand up for men playing in women's sports. But here we are, and just incredibly proud of all of the efforts that have taken place by everyone involved. So many different people have made this happen, and we have made a huge stride forward in protecting women's sports, protecting women's spaces, and I'm incredibly honored that I get to be a part of today.
It's pretty cool. Lauren, tell us, you've encountered this problem of men trying to cheat in your sport. What happened with you?
Yes, this landed right on my doorstep after losing in a playoff in January of 2024 to trans-identifying male golfer Haley Davidson. And from that moment on, seeing the national news and just national attention that it drew, I knew that from that moment forward, if I sat back and did nothing, I would only be enabling women's sport or enabling men competing in women's sports. And that is not something that I could stand by. And so I've received so much strength and support from those around me, especially the likes of Independent Women's Forum and their ambassadors. And so moving from then, I knew I needed to do something that was productive and helpful. And they have essentially empowered me and my peers to really make a change. We've seen great improvement with women's golf. There's still some room to go, but we are winning. We are taking women's sports back, and we are protecting young girls' futures, and that's incredibly exciting.
In golf in particular, do I understand correctly that that at the LPGA has made it so that men are not allowed to compete anymore?
So the new policy that has come into play for this upcoming year is that men who transition pre-puberty would still be allowed to compete, but any post-puberty individuals would not. So by no means is the policy perfect. We want it to be XX only, women only, period, dot.
Yes.
There is no need for this gray area, these blurred lines. It leaves it open for, potential lawsuits to come, but at the end of the day, it was at least a step forward.
Yeah.
But it's definitely still some room to improve.
Yeah, no, big time, especially because that policy actually incentivizes abusing children at an even earlier age in order to make it so that they're eligible in the LPGA. It's actually really terrible. And I hope they come to their senses. Do you sense that things are changing in a positive direction here, Lauren, not just with the president's executive order today, but with the broader awareness of this problem?
Absolutely. I think across the board, even before this issue, became a huge topic with regards to the election this year, I truly have felt that the general public was in 80 to 90% agreement, but it just wasn't being talked about, or we weren't being loud enough. And that silent majority was not being so silent. That loud minority was overpowering the silent majority. And so now we are coming forward. We are using our voices. We are making them known.
Yeah.
And I really think that the the consensus now is being spoken. And we're saying that we're not going to continue to sit back anymore and let these outrageous policies bulldoze the work of all female athletes, current and former. So
Yes.
I really do think the tide is turning, and we are making some great changes. We still have room to go. We need the Senate to push this through and make this into law, to protect this, this more than just these 4 years. But I think having the government, having President Trump really making this a priority is certainly helping the rest of the country want to follow suit.
Lauren, I don't know the rest of your politics here. I know obviously you care about this issue, but I will say that one thing I've encountered with young women, namely my young daughter is a swimmer. She loves swimming. If there's any issue that has perfectly directed her towards sanity when it comes to her politics, to the extent that she has any, it's this one.
Mm-hmm.
When I bring this up and I talk about, hey, there's some people who think boys should compete against you in your sport. She's like, that's crazy. She said, she looks at me and she instantly is able to sort through this. And this is one of those things, Lauren, where I was, when I was younger, I wasn't sure. I'm like, when do I introduce this to my kid, that this is even happening in real life, that people are attempting to do this? And I am so I'm so personally happy that we talked about it, because it instantly set her on the right track. She just looked at that and goes, that's nuts. And so I think, Lauren, I think kids understand this in an innate way, well beyond in the case of many adults who have really distorted this into something unrecognizable.
Oh, 1,000%. This is so simple. This is common sense. And I think that's kind of why the majority of Americans are in agreement, but the majority of Americans are going about their days and working their jobs, and they see this from afar and they just think it's silly. Why should we even be having to be brave and courageous and stand up for this when it is such a simple issue? Men and women are different. That's okay. We should be celebrating those differences.
Yes.
Rather than, and it's been very, very interesting to see, but I think more and more people are waking up and saying enough is enough. They do not want to see their daughters. I do not want to see my niece have to compete against a male at any level. And people are sick of it. And so finally we're finding our voice, and we're using our voice, and we're recognizing the strength in numbers, and that when we stand together, we're pretty tough to beat.
Lauren Miller, you're a professional golfer. What kind of blowback have you received for speaking up on behalf of sanity here? One of the things I've been struck by is that there are women who are standing up, thank goodness. Sometimes not the most famous women in sports. A lot of them have actually been, let's be honest, cowards when it comes to this issue. They don't want to. They don't want to imperil whatever, financial structure that they're benefiting from. But there have been women like yourself who are competing at the highest level in female golf, who are speaking up against this. Why is it that there, at least in the past, have been so few women willing to step out and stake their reputations on defending reality?
Yeah, I think you touched on it, and that financial piece is definitely plays a part, as well as because it hasn't hit women's golf at quite the highest level. I think women, even though they probably agree with me, they just haven't been willing to stick their neck out on an issue that hasn't directly impacted them yet. But we can't wait for it to come to us and then say something. Yeah. We have to be proactive about this. That's the only way that we're going to continue to keep women's sports safe. So for me, it was, once it came right on my doorstep, I said, I can no longer just sit back and let this happen. I do not want anyone else to experience this. But that definitely came after a lot of prayer and discernment, and saying that this is way bigger than me. This is about, the future of women's golf as a whole. And, any small, comments or disgust, honestly, for me, it's been very minimal. I feel like the golf community is very united on this topic. I have received so much support from my peers, and that has continued to help encourage me. And we've seen the support. We initiated through Independent Women last year this letter that we sent to the LPGA, the USGA, and the IGF, saying and urging them to look at the science. And we received over 275 signatures from other female professional golfers, all in agreement with us. And so it is out there. Girls have just been a little bit more timid, but since the policy change, we are starting to see more and more women can use their voices, and hopefully that continues to grow and they can recognize just the true impact that they have. And when they speak up, it's for something incredibly meaningful and rewarding, and it's going to last a lot longer than any trophy could.
Yeah. All right. Well, Lauren Miller, I'm so grateful you joined us today. And one last question for you. I know that you're opposed to men playing in your sport, but would you make an exception to play a round of golf with President Trump?
I would love nothing more than to have the opportunity to play with President Trump. He's definitely got quite the game, as well as his granddaughter, Kai. Incredibly excited to follow her career. Absolutely would cherish an opportunity to get to play with our president. And so who knows? Maybe that would be in the cards. That'd be a special day.
That would be cool. That'd be very cool. Lauren Miller from the Independent Women's Forum and Pro Golf. Thank you very much for your time today. Congrats on being there for a great moment.
Thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it.
Of course. There's Lauren Miller. Thank you for that. I do want to play a little audio from the White House press conference today because Caroline Leavitt addressed all of this as well, was talking about just how important today's events were. Take a listen. Here's Caroline.
Is continuing to deliver on that with an executive order that he will sign later today. The president will be signing an executive order keeping men out of women's sports. To defend
How great is it that everyone can speak plainly now about this? That they don't have to dress it up in stupid language like they're ESPN. I just read that stupid. A biologically assigned male at birth. No, morons. Speak like Caroline. How old is Caroline again? They keep telling us how young she is. She's 27 years old. She's 27, and she has a much better head on her shoulders than the entire editorial staff at ESPN.
Safety of athletes, protect competitive integrity, and uphold the promise of Title IX. This common sense action from President Trump ends the disgusting betrayal of women and girls by the previous administration, who for years catered to radical activists who wanted biological males to be treated as women in workplace showers, competitive sports, prisons, and even rape shelters. Gender ideology insanity is over.
Is over. She received a question from the great Mary Margaret Olahan of the Daily Wire. Is this going to have any impact on the Olympics in 2028? That's a great question. What did Caroline say?
Questions for you on the news of the day. So how is today's executive order going to impact the 2028 Summer Olympics in Los Angeles? For example, would a man who thinks that he's a transgender woman be allowed to compete as a female on U.S. soil?
It's a very good question, and the president has actually mentioned this, that he does expect the Olympic Committee and the NCAA to no longer allow men to compete in women's sports. And I think the president, with the signing of his pen, starts a very public pressure campaign on these organizations to do the right thing for women and for girls across the country. Again, this is an incredibly popular position. There have been many notable female athletes who have had the courage to speak out against some very powerful institutions in this country. They deserve to have a voice and a say. The president is bringing their voice to the highest level at the White House this afternoon, and he expects these organizations to comply with this federal executive order that he'll be signing today.
And among those women, Lauren Miller, who we just spoke with. If you missed that interview, you could check it out on the website. Go to WMAL.com. We always have the podcast. You can listen to all the interviews we do. All right, let's go to the phones. I got Mike calling in from Sunshine, line 3. Mike, good afternoon. So you're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Vince, thank you for taking my call. This is a topic near and dear to my heart. I was a cross-country and track coach for several years of young men and women in high school. And I want your listening audience to know this fact. 1,800 runners have broken the 4-minute mile since 1954, since Roger Bannister did it in 1954. Guess how many were Olympic-caliber women?
I couldn't even begin.
0. None. The world record for the mile is 4 minutes and 7.64 seconds for biological females. Humans are a dimorphic species. That is a biological fact.
Yeah.
And it's just and your daughter's in swimming. You see that males are about 10% faster on the track, in the swimming pool, and at the Olympic level, it's completely apparent that we are a dimorphic species.
That's for sure. It exists at every level of sport. You know what? The one that stands out to me, Mike, that I always think of is, at the highest levels of diving, men have jumped from higher platforms than women because their bodies can endure more force on impact. It's just that's literally falling in midair. That's the difference. Yeah, no, there are clear differences between men and women, and I love women, and I'm glad they're different. I really am. Coming up, I will take more of your calls, and we'll talk about President Trump's wild presidency and why are members of Congress yelling the word tranny on the floor of the House? It's all ahead. Hey, good afternoon. 535 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. You can join us today at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. As always, we have tons of breaking news to share with you, including today. Senator McConnell of Kentucky has apparently fallen again. It's way past time for the guy to retire. The Republicans in Kentucky have actually set up a clever system to replace him should he do that. They passed a law that said that the Republican Party in Kentucky would choose 3 potential replacements and then hand them to the Democrat governor of Kentucky, who would then get the chance to pick only from those 3. So the Republicans would get to dictate the terms there. Now, presumably, the Democrat governor of Kentucky is going to pick the worst of the 3, but hopefully they don't give the guy any bad options. But Mitch McConnell, unfortunately, has fallen again. Fox News' Chad Pergram confirming today, down Senate stairs after voting to confirm Scott Turner to become HUD secretary. Chad says we're unclear about the injuries, but Fox is told he appears to be okay. McConnell was helped up by Senators Steve Daines and Markwayne Mullin. So prayers for a speedy recovery from whatever injuries he may have sustained from this one. But this keeps happening over and over and over again. And it's long past time for him to work his way towards retirement, clearly. We, again, are taking your calls this half hour. A lot of chaos going on in Congress other than Mitch McConnell falling downstairs. I want to share some of that with you. But before we get there, I've got Nick calling in from Purcellville on line 6. Nick wants to weigh in on President Trump's big announcement about the United States stepping in to fix up Gaza. Nick, good afternoon to you, sir.
Hey, Vince. Thanks for taking my call. I think this exercise by Trump is pretty much he's testing the rich Arab nations to see if they want to get invest in this area. Now, Trump thinks of everything. He can't separate the real estate magnate from being president, and he looks at every piece of land on earth as real estate. And what he's saying is that, look, you got a bombed out area. It's not worth anything. It's blighted property, and let's make a deal. And I'm sure he asked somebody on his staff, who owns it, and can we buy it, and he's challenging the rich Arabs like Qatar, who, by the way, owns 5% of the Capitals and the Wizards, and all the Capsmen should be up in arms about that, by the way. But I'm sure he's looking at it like, buying Alaska or Greenland or anything else.
Well, he definitely can see the potential, can't you? And because, look, this is property. Gaza itself, if you just assess it as property, it's tons of oceanfront property. It's beautiful, right on the Mediterranean. It is sunset property. In other words, if you're staying there on the coast, you're watching the sunset each evening. It's about as good as you could possibly get, and right now it's a hellhole. And so President Trump is stepping into this going, okay, none of you want to fix this? Nobody wants to take care of this problem? I'll take care of it. How about I come in and I take over this whole thing? And I was saying earlier in the program, Nick, I don't think that in general the Middle East broadly wants the United States to establish a big old foothold right there, and instead are going to come rushing to the negotiating table to go, whoa, let's see how we can fix this before you do that thing you just said. So I think you're right. I think President Trump detects possibilities there and sees potential there, but he's also sort of shaking everybody out of their slumber here and getting them to the table.
And Vince, do you know who is it actually owned by individuals, or is it just the area of the world that is owned by nobody and it's just occupied?
Well, it's governed by Hamas. That's what I can tell you from my faraway perch. And That is unacceptable given the amount of chaos and terror that they've been able to orchestrate from there. And so something needs to be done. I mean, this is, the big thing that people need to know about the president's plan that was fleshed out even more today by the White House and by Secretary Marco Rubio now, is that the goal is to move civilians out of the region for a temporary amount of time, to rebuild it into something livable, and then to welcome people from all over the world to live there and to have it thrive, including Palestinians. That's the word out of the White House right now. So we'll see. We'll see what this looks like in the end. But for now, we have to have a little bit of trust in the process as President Trump throws a big deal on the table to see who's going to take a couple bites, Nick.
I tell you, it's surprises every day, huh?
It is. Big time. Big time. Thank you, Nick. Thank you for waiting patiently, too.
You're welcome.
I appreciate that. Let's see here. I've got Ed calling in from Alexandria on line 1, wants to weigh in on USAID. Ed, good afternoon. You're on the Vince Coglianese show.
Good afternoon, Vince. Love your show.
Thank you, sir.
Hey, I just wanted to touch base. I've been selling technology for about 30 years or so, and I've been in USAID for just many, many, many times, and it's basically a bunch of zombies walking around. They don't know what to do. They just kind of walk around and do nothing, and it doesn't surprise me whatsoever.
What you're describing, it sounds like lemmings, like just people bouncing off of walls and just and just every day is the same as the last. Is that the kind of thing you saw?
Pretty much, and it kind of permeates with other government agencies, and specifically who I call out is the Government Accounting Office, the GAO.
Uh-huh.
They're supposed to be overseeing, who's spending money, where they're spending money, where's the fraud, and they're just useless too.
Yeah.
And I've been in there many, many times as well. They're useless.
So, Ed, I played some audio earlier this week of, I think it was an NBC newscast or something. But they were talking about that USAID employees were panicked as Elon Musk and Doge were arriving to look through everything. And they ran into the offices and they started pulling their pride flags down and they began hiding books that they thought were incriminating. Are these the types of things you would see when you would walk through the office, Ed?
The biggest thing I saw, which was disgraceful, was at the end of the government fiscal year, which is like September 30th.
Yeah.
There's this policy, and Elon Musk, he has to address this. It's a use it or lose it policy.
Right.
So if you don't use your money that you've been allocated for your budget, they subtract it from next year's budget. So what they do is they go out and buy things that they don't need, that they don't require, that doesn't support the mission of the agency.
Yes.
So every year it's the same thing, and it's use it or lose it, and the taxpayers are, we just get screwed.
Every agency.
Time and time again.
Every federal agency does exactly what you're describing. It is chaos, and it wastes a whole bunch of money. And right now we are awaiting the arrival of Russ Vought back as the head of the Office of Management and Budget. And Russ has talked a lot about this. And in particular, he's talked about this insane Budget and Impoundment Control Act, which is a law that basically says that when Congress authorizes spending, that the president is not allowed to save money. So President Trump and the executive branch, by law, are not allowed to save taxpayers' money. That's what the claim is. Russ Vought has correctly pointed out, this is insane. This is totally insane. And especially for a guy like Trump, who prides himself on being able to deliver ahead of schedule and under budget, that's exactly what you want out of the executive branch. And yet we've built a government that is as wasteful as possible by law.
Yeah. I just want to say one thing, and I just think Rand Paul over the years has been a national treasure because he's been speaking about this and talking about this.
Yeah.
The waste, he puts together some sort of pamphlet, manifesto, whatever you want to call it, about the waste, and nobody seems to care. And now finally, Trump is this is a focus, and he's got Elon Musk, who is just going to do. I mean, it's a monumental effort, but he's going to do a great job and get rid of this. But Rand Paul, kudos to him. He's been espousing the government waste every year.
Yeah,
And,
rightfully so. Yeah, there have been a couple guys like that, but few and far between. And Rand Paul definitely a standout among them. You're right about that, Ed. Thank you. I appreciate that call. Excellent,
Vince. Take
excellent point. Yeah, so there's Rand Paul. On one hand, you have Rand Paul, a guy who, is trying to do the people's bidding. On the other hand, you have the entirety of the Democrat Party, it seems like. In fact, you see today that Al Green, not the singer, not this is the worst Al Green. The congressman who has, I don't remember how many times he filed articles of impeachment against Donald Trump, but he's tried to impeach Trump with every waking breath. Every time in Trump's first term, he tried to impeach him over and over and over again. Today, Al Green once again is trying to start the ball rolling on articles of impeachment.
Ethnic cleansing has been a crime against humanity. And I stand here today in the well to denounce what was said, to denounce what the president said, to denounce the complicity of the Prime Minister of Israel.
What is he talking
and
about?
to remind people that Dr. King was right. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere.
He's trying to find
And
a nice place for people to live temporarily while he rebuilds their homes. Yes, that's ethnic cleansing.
Justice in Gaza is a threat to justice in the United States of America. I rise to announce that the movement to impeach the president has begun. I rise to announce that I will...
Actually, isn't it kind of amazing that he's waited for over 2 weeks to begin? I mean, what restraint, what delayed gratification he's been able to develop.
Movement to impeach the president has begun. I rise to announce that I will bring articles of impeachment against the president for dastardly deeds proposed and dastardly deeds done.
Oh, I love that. Dastardly deeds. I'm just happy that the word dastardly was entered into the congressional record today. So thank you, Al Green, for your service. Al Green trying to impeach Trump for dastardly deeds. And he's holding, I'm watching video of it a little bit now. He's holding his cane, menacingly. He's waving it around in the air. Really upset that the American voter is not on the Al Green side of the equation. Also today, we had some funny moments. Nancy Mace, Congresswoman Nancy Mace, who has basically given up caring at all what any Democrat thinks of anything. Today, during a congressional hearing, she was asking witnesses if the USAID has been awarding money to, quote, trannies in Guatemala.
USAID awarded $2 million to strengthen trans-led organizations to deliver gender-affirming health care in Guatemala. So to each of you this morning, does this advance the interests of American citizens paying for trannies in Guatemala to the tune of $2 million? Yes or no? Governor?
I have no position.
Of course you don't.
Of course you don't. Who is that person? I have no position. Well, you're an idiot, though. Or you're on the take. Leave it to Gerry Connolly to jump in and start freaking out about all this.
Gentlelady yields back.
Mr. Chairman, parliamentary inquiry.
Yes, sir.
The gentlelady has used a phrase that is considered a slur in the LGBTQ community and the transgender community.
Oh, come on.
And let me please finish without interruption.
No, I won't.
And
Tranny. I don't really care. You want penises in women's bathrooms, and I'm not going to have it.
Okay.
No, thank you.
Let the gentleman state his parliamentary inquiry.
to me, a slur is a slur. And here in the committee, a level of decorum requires us to try consciously to avoid slurs. You just heard the gentlelady actually actively, robustly repeat it. And I would just ask the chairman that she be counseled that we ought not to be engaged. We can have debate and policy discussion without offending human beings who are fellow citizens. And so I would ask, as a parliamentary inquiry, whether the use of that phrase is not, in fact, a violation of the decorum rules.
Mr. Chairman, I'm not going to be counseled by a man over men and women's spaces or men who have mental health issues dressing as women. I'm not being counseled by some guy.
My inquiry is to the chairman,
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Ordered.
Why did Gerry Connolly win re-election? I mean, what a joke that guy's. And you know he lied too? You know, he ran against Mike Van Meter, great American. Gerry Connolly withheld that he had a pretty serious health issue until after the election. He didn't tell the voters. He knew. He just refused to tell anybody about it until after the election was over. You know, because of his high regard for voters. Thanks, Gerry. Thanks for that. Gerry Connolly, language policing today. I don't think Nancy Mace was bothered at all by it. You know, in the world that we live in now, all the news cycle is just endless. Let me tell you really quickly what the FCC is doing. The FCC has a new chairman, Brendan Carr. He's a good American. And you ready for all the things that they're digging into right now? Some of these are just from today. FCC chairman orders investigation into NPR and PBS sponsorships. Looking into those organizations, they receive a ton of government money. I love that the NPR PBS defunding debates, we bring it up and we say, hey, maybe we should defund these. And they say things like, oh, we don't even receive that much money from the government anyway. Okay, good. Then you won't even notice when we defund you. Don't do it. It's going to kill us. You'll destroy our organizations. So which one is it? It's nothing or a lot? The answer, it's a lot. It's a lot of money. And they conceal the way that they get all this cash, but it's from their member stations, which are all receiving government grants. So it's tons and tons of government money flowing in. Also, the FCC has launched a probe this week into a Soros-backed radio station that was revealing the live locations of undercover ICE agents. Oh, I see. Man, why does that Soros money always involved in the worst possible things? They're alerting illegal foreign nationals to the presence of law enforcement to help them evade being held accountable under our laws. Okay, so the FCC has launched an investigation into that. Here's the new one. Today, the FCC, under its new chairman, Brendan Carr, has released CBS News' entire 60-minute interview with Kamala Harris, the one that they did during the campaign, the one that they hacked up in the most theatrical way possible in order to try and make Kamala Harris look like she was competent and could string a sentence together. I haven't had a chance to watch it wall to wall yet, but I was watching some of this today in between on commercial breaks and things. In case you were wondering, Kamala Harris is completely incoherent and should have never been anywhere near 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. And yet, we had a vegetable for president and someone who's not far behind as vice president. Boy, I'm glad we're out of that era and into the Trump era again. Hey, coming up next, the great one, Mark Levin, and I'll keep covering all the breaking news with you right here on WMAL.